Since we were a child, we knew that water's running out. Since we were a child, we knew what they should do about.
At the end of 2019, Joseph Carolus, who operated a solid waste processing facility at Route 212 in Saugerties, was shut down by the DEC because he had been violating his permit. He had been taking in construction and demolition debris from outside of the county. He had been bringing it up from New York City. He had been crushing it. It was contaminated. For a long time, the town and the residents had tried to, put a stop to this. There had been an ongoing battle, and finally, at the end of 2019, his operation was shut down. He was no longer allowed to accept any material. In early 2020, trucks began leaving that facility and bringing material to 10 Church Road in Woodstock. And over the course of the next few months, about 200 trucks overflowing with what we know to be contaminated construction and demolition material were dumped and buried at 10 Church Road in Woodstock.
Disposable everything. Why would
The contaminants include a suite of semi-volatile organics with long chemical names, which I could bore you with, but won't. It includes some heavy metals, lead, chromium. It includes PFOS, FOS as well, DDT. It has pesticides in there. So we have just a number of chemicals that are present already in the fill. So this fill material, which I have a sample on the table of behind there, this is right from the Amy's property that was came running off of the 10 Church Road property. It's material that's brought in from out of town. One of the things I documented in an earlier report I did on the subject was to point out that it's full of a kind of rock called schist. Schist is not found anywhere in Ulster County. So we know that this material was brought in, and this is a key tenet of one of the laws of the town of Woodstock is you shall import no foreign material and dump it as waste product in your town. So C&D waste can be bad stuff. I used to work for years ago at the Attorney General's office up in Albany. And some of the cases we brought in were racketeering cases, which involved the dumping of C&D waste. And that's because what's in the soil, they talk about the removal of the bricks and the stones and the concrete. If somebody would hold up that screen on the table, this is the contaminant removal method, okay? The contaminants that we are concerned about are present in the soil, the fill, the waste material that's there. And it's material that's absorbed and bound onto the soil particles, and when it rains, just as John Conrad said in the documentary, it will leach on downward into the aquifer.
So what you're in fact saying is that these chemicals, the contaminants you mentioned, the hydrocarbons, the DDT, the heavy metal, the cadmium, the PFOS, this sifting method doesn't address any of that.
Well, it's actually a dream, way to get rid of waste. It's a dream for the contaminator to get rid of the waste. The problem is, it's a dream method to get rid of waste because it doesn't treat the waste. It's the nightmare for the people who live down gradient of it. In this case, we've been hearing all about the Amy's, but in fact there's another half dozen properties that are directly down gradient of this property. And
so you're saying that it will indeed endanger the drinking water down gradient from the
absolutely. John Conrad in the video here mentioned that it might take 2 or 3 years for the contaminants to reach these wells. Think about it like this. If you're pumping your well, okay, you're actually creating a cone of depression downward. You're pulling water in. And it's not far away from some of these down gradient houses, the Amy's and others. Amy's 23 feet. Some of the other people just down gradient 170 feet. How long is that going to take? Is it going to take a couple of years? How about we look at the testing we just analyzed for the Terramore site on the same geologic material? We found within hours of doing a pumping test, we impacted groundwater in wells 2,500 feet away. So we can be talking, months not necessarily years. And the thing is, you don't know. Every day that somebody pumps their well, they're potentially pulling in contaminants. So one of the other things they did on the site, they spread out the contaminants. Well, first thing you do on a contaminant site is source removal. You get rid of the source to reduce the potential impact. And if there was ever a chance to maybe take part of that source material away, it's gone because you've mixed it. Once it's mixed, it can't be unmixed.
So what you're saying that this Plan E, in your opinion, actually might have jeopardized the drinking water even more than if...
It's there either whether mixed or unmixed. The thing is, as long as it's there, the source continues to exist. And the more time that lapses, the greater the risk because more leachate will infiltrate downward into the aquifer. So every day that you waste time leaving it there is just a greater public health and risk. You're not taking into account the best interests of the town people by leaving that source material there.
Is complete removal the best option?
Complete removal is what I recommended in 2020. John Conrad has recommended since. Another hydrogeologist I work with, Dr. Catherine Beinkopfner, we've discussed this topic. You know, when you look at the people who make the recommendations with the hydrogeologic training, it's unanimous. Get it out. You remove the source material, you protect the public health and safety.
So what should happen with the Amy's wells and all the down gradient wells in Shady and Woodstock? And what about the future of the municipal, water in terms of the aquifer? What should be done in terms of prevention of?
Yeah, it's a tough question. Obviously, as mentioned in the documentary, you want to sample these wells, at least 4 times a year, quarterly, for quite a host of contaminants. What should we test for? Well, we don't have manifests to know how many loads went in. We don't know what the chemistry was in those manifests. We're not being told what's there. We know it's against the law. So we can test for contaminants and maybe you'll show up. But think about it. If you're the homeowner whose well is 200 feet away and you're pumping down water, pulling in your groundwater, and you test quarterly and you find contaminants, how long have you potentially been exposed to PFAS, a forever chemical? So for me, in my well, I would not be drinking my well water. So what do you do if it finds contamination? A couple of options. Depending on the chemicals, you could potentially set up a treatment system. But no, it's a public health and safety risk every day worsening.
So you're saying like with the winter, with the ongoing leaving the bulk of the berm there, in a way, what you're saying, the longer that it stays, the more potential for well contamination and potential aquifer contamination.
Every day, when it rains, big rains, snow melt, it infiltrates downward. The next stream peak that goes up, that means the precipitation's falling. So every day it increases the risk. And what's going to happen next? We've got down gradient homeowners that are there facing the same issues. They could piggyback on the next lawsuit. The Woodstock will have another lawsuit. So, what do you do? Sometimes in life we make decisions that are wrong. And the courageous thing to do is to stop and review. Maybe I should relook at the situation. What's in the best interest of the public? What will protect the health and safety of the townspeople? And that review might come around with some courage and say, listen, it is simply time. I made a mistake. Let's do the right thing and get it cleaned up. Get rid of the lawsuits as much as you can and make it safe for the townspeople.
What ultimately is this going to cost the town of Woodstock? By kicking the can down the road and not addressing the removal of the fill, what could the potential cost be to the town? Not just in having contaminated water in the municipal wells.
If people end up sick because they drank the water, more lawsuits, and then your costs for litigation. So at what point do you cut your losses? And who are you representing? If you want to represent your constituents, you get rid of the source, and maybe by doing that and agreeing to do it, you can help move away some of the costs associated with long-term litigation.
The more Woodstock public addresses this, we do have a neighborhood group called Protect Woodstock's Water.
Every resource we've gotten our hands on, we've made publicly available on protectwoodstockswater.com.
Do you want to come back?
Yeah, really, in a lot of respects, the place to go is in your own town. I just want to read just a tiny section. This is Woodstock Town Code Section 192-4. It provides in full, no person, firm, or private, or municipal corporation or department thereof shall place, deposit, or dump construction and demolition debris on any public or privately owned lot within the boundaries of the town. I've shortened it a bit, but the law is here. There's no reason for Woodstock to represent the polluter. Don't be the only town out there that's representing the polluter.
Another question that somebody wanted me to ask, which was, in your experience, 42 years experience, have you known any other town in which they have been defending the polluter in this way?
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking with my hydrogeologist friend about that very subject last week, and between the two of us, we had no clue of any town that has ever sided with the contaminated.
We used to be happy when you drive up the driveway in your home. And when you drive up the driveway and look at a dump, it kind of ruins the day. And then when you come out in the morning, it didn't go away overnight. It's still here.
Since we were a child, we knew that water's running out. Since we were a child, we knew what they should do about the grinding down, the vicious gears, the gnashing of the teeth. Disposable everything, disposable everything.